News just in from Germany, where the Maybach super luxury car brand has marked its own death with an emotional ceremony attended by both of its customers.
Hello and welcome to Gareth Jones on Speed, returning after our lengthy summer break this year, the biggest summer break ever. I hope you enjoyed our little deposits we left for you in the meantime. Deposit, was that the wrong word?
No, I just thought you were going to say I hope you enjoyed not having us pestering your iTunes or similar browser with our stupid podcast. I
That's
hope you enjoyed
Richard.
A bit of respite. Hello.
And this is Zog. How are you, man?
Getting by.
When I tweeted the other day that there was a new episode, somebody said, "Oh no, that means I've got 7 episodes to catch up on, so maybe we should slow down."
And now it's 8.
With this one as well, and there'll be
I
9
discovered,
soon.
though, on my phone that if I'm listening to a podcast, you can set it to like 1.5 speed playback.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
So
it's actually
for the
quite
busy
handy.
person in a hurry and with a lot of podcasts to catch up on, then just do that. Although we could really screw you over by
talking extra specially slow. Because it's surprising how intelligible speech is when you even kind of double the speed of it. You can still understand it.
We're about a minute
Maybe.
in and we've already digressed a little.
Should we talk about cars?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to ask you both a question. What's been occupying your minds about cars recently? I'm going to tell you what's been occupying my mind, and that is that there are proposals to build a race circuit in South Wales at the head of the valley, sort of Ebbw Vale, and I've always been very sceptical about it, but it looks as though it actually could happen. But I have a problem with it. They're going to call it the Circuit of Wales.
And you object because you're being pedantic and you're saying if it's a Circuit of Wales, you've got to go all the way round the outside.
Well, that had occurred
that
to
would
me.
have been my objection.
I am being pedantic about it. I think it should be called Cilch Cymru. It should be in Welsh. The name should be in Welsh, not in English. Anyway, that's not really about cars. It's about Welsh identity. Have you been thinking about cars, Richard? One short idea that's been occupied?
Yeah, I'm just sort of quite pleased with the British car industry at the moment, albeit that a lot of it is founded on foreign investment, foreign ownership, but
But it's got some good bits in it.
things are
Crikey,
going quite
God,
well.
so-
Every time I drive through the Midlands, I see something taped up on test. Every week they put out a press release about how they're hiring more engineers and more people to build the cars. They're running a 24-hour shift at Halewood to build the Evoque. And
New
I
engine
think-
plans.
New
or
engine
something,
plants.
yeah.
They've just released that supercharged V6. Hooray for the British car industry. I think it's actually, everything's looking
Well
quite good now. New Toyota Auris as well has just been announced, going to be built in Britain again.
Yeah.
Loads of investment going on at Nissan in Washington. We're making loads of cars in this country. It's great.
Zog, what's been occupying your mind?
Apart from, as you know, how to get my washers working every time, first time again, which we won't go into.
Not your washing machine, the washers on your Porsche.
Washer, windscreen washer jets. Apart from that, and apart from hitting the big 200,000 miles.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well done. You're most of the way to the moon now.
Yes, which would be about 250,000, so nearly there.
238,000.
There you go.
Yeah, mean distance.
The thing that's really been on my mind is electric cars, specifically urban electric cars. Why isn't there a cheap, fun city electric sports car, an electric equivalent of Lotus 7, Light Car Company Rocket, Smart Roadster?
Cappuccino I always described as a city sports car.
Yeah, very good, yeah. There doesn't really seem to be anything like that out there at the moment. And I was basically thinking, well, can't be that hard to do. There are so many kit car companies in the UK who are making low-cost, lightweight sports cars that you either build yourself or that they build in small volumes. But there's a lot of companies making these things that you could use as the basis for a fun city electric car. Doesn't need a lot of range because, as we know from running around town, almost every trip I make in town, the round trip is less than 15 miles.
Yeah.
And you make probably one of those trips a day, if that. Let's say you make a couple of trips like that. You don't need a range of more than about 40 miles for this thing. And I was just thinking, how hard can it be to make that thing? I figure I could do it myself. Why isn't anybody else doing this? Why can't I go out and for less than 10 grand get a kind of urban equivalent of the Lotus 7 in electric?
What you're actually suggesting here is building this yourself.
I'm thinking, could I do this myself? Would it be an interesting project to do? If you were going to do this kind of thing seriously, you might want to crowdsource it a bit, get some smarter people involved to advise on a couple of bits of it. But the thing is, why
Why doesn't it exist?
Why don't these things exist? Because I just figure
So your
it's just too
solution,
easy.
your solution is to buy a Caterham 7 or a Westfield 7. Or
See, I think Westfield, there is...
Well, they
did an electric
somebody
version.
did an electric Westfield. Maybe it was Westfield.
Oh, no, yeah, Westfield, there's this iRacer series, which I think in the offing, I believe, which are for electric Westfield cars. I don't know quite how far that's come along, but you're right, that there is something going on in that sense. Somebody has turned an aerial atom into an electric prototype. There's a very quick aerial atom prototype. I can't remember what it's called. It's some guy in the States. I can't remember. But
Aerial electron.
That's what I thought. Yeah, you can't do it with a Proton, though, you see. If you were to buy a Malaysian car. Yeah.
The atom, again, is a perfect basis for this kind of thing, because the things that you want as the starting point for an electric car are, in a lot of ways, the same things that you want from a little sports car. You want lightweight.
Yeah.
You want as little extra stuff as possible.
Yeah.
I reckon the way you do this, certainly if you were going to do a small run of cars rather than just doing a one-off, you talk to a kit car manufacturer and you have them custom make however many tweaked versions of their basic chassis that you want.
Yeah.
Because it might well be that what you actually come up with is a little bit more lightweight than the original kit, therefore it doesn't have to be exactly the same frame. It can be a slightly lighter frame, perhaps. But the point is, you get a bunch of off-the-shelf chassis and you fit them up with the same suspension components and same brake bits as you'd put on the petrol version. You just have a different drivetrain that is simpler to put together than an internal combustion engine-based drivetrain.
I suppose stashing the batteries would be an issue.
Well, I don't think it's an issue at all, because electric motors take up so little space. Take the volume required for an internal combustion engine, a gearbox, a differential, subtract from that the volume required for a couple of electric motors, and you've still got masses and masses of space left for batteries. Plus, you can shift those batteries around in the chassis to give yourself the kind of weight distribution you want. For a lightweight sort of urban run around, you're going to be slightly lighter on batteries than a lot of other electric cars. I think this is kind of worth pursuing.
I think what you're suggesting here is an alternative Tesla, because remember the Tesla was based on the Elise chassis with a stack of mobile phone batteries. We've learnt a great deal from that car. One step down from the Elise is, in fact one step up from the Elise in some ways, is the Caterham 7, that simplicity of that chassis, which makes it even lighter. I don't think your idea is as bonkers as it sounds.
It's not bonkers at all. It's absolutely sensible.
Yeah, indeed. But it has been done, but it was done expensively. You're talking about doing it more cheaply.
Well, yeah, exactly. The Tesla is a different thing. That it's a much more complete kind of vehicle than what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of something that is...
Well, just the front wheels.
That's smaller, lighter, much cruder.
Well, I've just remembered. Speaking of...
And it has to look good. Basically, okay. It's got yeah.
Some people think it looks good. It's light, maybe a little crude, and they are doing an electric version. Morgan are working on an electric roadster.
Is it based on a three-wheeler rather than...
No, it's on the old school, the +4...
The life car.
Really?
Well, there's that, but there's also just an electric Morgan roadster.
I mean...
similar principles.
Similar principle, although Morgan, obviously, kind of a bit more expensive. I'm thinking...
A little, yes.
I'm thinking cheap.
But wood is a good insulator, you see. You've got all that electricity on board. You've got a wood chassis, no problem.
Good morning, Mr. Carmichael.
Good morning, Mr. Fellows, sir.
I see what you've done there. You've said Morgan instead of morning, because we work at Morgan. In fact, you've done that every morning for the last 52 years. Jolly good.
So, work is progressing extremely well on our latest project.
Is it? Good. And, can I ask, what is the latest project?
Well, it's a new form of propulsion, sir. Electricalicity.
Electrical what?
Electricalicity.
Now, I've read about this, and I think you'll find it's pronounced electricity.
No, I'm pretty sure it's electricalicity.
No, well, we can solve this. How's it spelt?
I don't know, sir.
I see. Could you tell me how it works?
No, I don't know that either.
Right, I'm going to be square with you, Carmichael. I don't like the sound of this electricity at all. I'm not sure it's a Morgan thing. It all sounds rather modern.
Well, I thought you might say that, sir. So, we've been working on another alternative fuel system.
Have you? And this alternative, Can you spell it?
Oh, yes, sir.
Do you know how it works?
I certainly do.
And is it modern?
It is not, sir.
Good. Well, what is it?
Steam.
Ah, that sounds smashing. And very resourceful.
Well, there is a war on, you know.
I know.
Sniff Petrol! With Gareth Jones on speed!
I wish you could hear the bits that we talk about when we're not actually recording, because they're probably more interesting than this bloody programme, aren't
To us,
they?
anyway.
We were talking about Vulcan bombers.
Vulcan bombers, and we got onto British aerospace, and... Anyway, Richard, you've, I believe, adopted a new barometer scale of how cool or interesting a car is.
Yeah. Well, so in our sort of summer recess, I have been driving a few cars, just keeping abreast of stuff that's coming out.
Do you want to list them?
The things that I'm sort of interested in that are new, and like Peugeot 208, just because I like the look of that, and new Fiat Panda, because I love the old Panda, Alfa Giulietta, who's got this new double-clutch gearbox in it, Lexus GS, I quite like the look of that, and I secretly quite like the old 450 hybrid one. It was an underrated car. It's
Quite right, too.
What else have I had? I mean, I had a Ferrari 458. I mean, that's an exception rather than the rule. Just glorious
mention that in
weekend.
Yeah,
Do you know what happened?
By
though?
the way, I
didn't.
By the way,
even
I forgot about the Ferrari.
Oh, I dropped a name.
Come on! You're with us now, Porter.
A man from Ferrari rang me. I didn't ring him and go, "Hi, could I borrow the
Was his
new?"
name Felipe Massa? Was he trying to ingratiate
he was putting on a voice. Imagine.
It was the lift that gave him away.
And then I
and the
got
squint.
I got the 458 and the brake lines had been cut. So he said this, but this man from Ferrari said, because we're aware that there's a lot of columnists for magazines or editors of magazines haven't actually appraised all of our cars recently. Have you ever driven a 458? And I went, well, no, I haven't. And he went, well, you probably should. And then I said, well, because I've driven the McLaren 12C.
Uh-huh.
And then he went, oh, well, you should definitely drive the Ferrari, because I don't want you to think that you're going around telling everyone the McLaren must be better when you haven't tried its deadly rival. So, a few weekends ago, I had a long weekend with a Ferrari 458, and I don't know what I can tell you about it, because it's very difficult to not slip into just superlatives to the point of almost it being meaningless. But it's an incredible car. Everything you've ever read about the 458 is true. But what's impressive about it is how impressive it is in every way. Because I think it'd be all right if it was very, very fast.
You've blown the phrase already. I think I had to wrap up there. It's very impressive.
It's impressive. I'm just already sort of starting to babble just because it is
What do you mean?
an amazing thing. Well, it's the completeness of it. It would be all well and good if it was incredibly fast in a straight line, and you'd also presume it would be quite good at going around corners, because that's the thing.
That's what you'd
But
expect.
it's actually the fact that you can drive it as if it is my Jag, where you just sit back, you put it in auto, and you can waft through London feeling comfortable and relaxed. And the Ferrari, of all things, a mid-engine Ferrari, is better at that than many so-called executive cars that I've driven. It's got an auto
It doesn't
mode.
overheat. It doesn't
overheat.
It doesn't sort of
the
start
aircon works.
grumbling.
It's not perfect. They've got those buttons for the indicators on the wheel instead of a stalk. Now, the column stalk has worked very well for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Leave it alone. There's no need, because sometimes you've got a bit of lock on when you're sitting at a junction and the indicator is self-cancelled off, and then you're like, oh wait, I've got to remember that the left is now the right and vice versa, because the wheel has got a 180-degree bit of lock on. It's a rare circumstance,
so it'll flip.
but it happens. On
take your
roundabouts
word
it
for
can
it.
happen, mini roundabouts and things. It's just irritating.
But they
No
do
need.
this deliberately because that's how they would have in a race car.
Yeah, because race cars have indicators. I mean, that's the thing. It's a stupid idea. I wish they'd knock it off. They say, oh, you'll get used to it. And you do get used to it. Why should you need to get used to indicators? They've redesigned the shoelace. Oh, you'll get used to it. Yes, but shoelaces work fine. Just leave them be.
Is it possible that Apple have invented the column stalk indicator, and that's why they're not
that's the
allowing
thing,
anyone
you know.
else to use it?
Actually,
Is that-
something that's topical.
Thank you.
Something
That's what they
that
call me.
also is completely baffling in the Ferrari is that the sat-nav and radio system is just, again, needlessly complicated. Is everything that, as you bring up Apple, you know, that thing with the original iPod, they sort of said no function should be more than 3 finger movements away or something like that. And in the Ferrari, it's basically no function should be more than 3 days away. And you're still like, oh, I've got to give the car back now. I still haven't figured out how to make the sat-nav work. But this is by the by. The thing is, it's a car you can drive through London in complete comfort. That even rides nicely. The ride in its softest setting is lovely. The automatic mode on the double clutch box is seamless. It's uncanny, and you're thinking, this is absurd. This car can't possibly do this. And then you wind it all up into its sort of full-on maximum attack mode. It's faster than you'll ever really need. I can't see why anyone would go, oh, I need a car that's quicker than this. It's like being a sniper. So I took it up to the Cotswolds. You're going down straight roads. There are people bimbling around in front of you. And they're probably not bimbling. They're probably doing 50 miles an hour. Maybe even they're sort of actually doing 60. And it's a 60 mile an hour road. But you just see them and go, I'm having that. And you round them and that's it and you're gone. It's almost faster than you can comprehend sometimes.
And it's a safe car because of that, because the amount of time that you spend on the wrong side of the road...
exposed to danger.
Exactly.
Oh, there's almost none.
limited.
Almost
Yeah.
none. The other thing is actually it's a very safe car because the traction control is incredibly clever.
Yeah.
And it flatters you into thinking that you're being terribly skilled. I drove it in the rain and I was a bit of a divvy at one point and I clogged it off a roundabout and the car just did a little kick out. It wasn't opposite lock, I just wound off some lock in a panic. But we were fine. That wasn't me. That was the traction control. A lot of them, they're a bit sledgehammer. This is just beautifully
refined,
delicate, very
sorted.
clever.
Yeah.
I have two questions.
Impressive.
Number one, were there any Fiat Group parts that you could identify
No.
anywhere on that
No,
car?
do you know there weren't? I didn't see
Not
anything,
even the sat-nav?
No, God, no, because Fiat sat-nav isn't that baffling.
Really?
No, there were no Fiat... No, honestly, I think it's weird, isn't it? Even into the 90s, they used to use all sorts of bits from other people. But no, it's pretty much, I think, all bespoke now.
So you sure the engine wasn't four of your twin airs strapped together then?
It would be interesting. But no, because then if you divide the power up by 4, it was... Anyway, no.
The other question.
Go on.
Was it red?
No, it was a lovely light metallic blue with a black roof. Very pretty.
Oh, yes, of course, I saw the picture.
That
actually wasn't the question, because the question I was leading to was, did you pull?
Well, I took my wife away for a dirty weekend in the Cotswolds,
There
so
you
I
go,
suppose
pulled her.
technically yes.
Yeah. She love you more for it?
So I'm going to say no, she's not that superficial. But she did like the Ferrari a lot. She was very fond of it, and I was very fond of it. Even though it did make her scream in terror sometimes when I was giving it a bit of... picking people off. Not literally.
Not literally.
Going for a minimum amount of time exposed station. I wasn't going to talk about the Ferrari, and I have just talked about it, because I thought people would just go, oh, shut up, you total knob. You've had a Ferrari for the weekend, don't rub it in.
The point was, the Ferrari was not the Zenith, I've heard.
Right, this is what we're going to talk about.
You've got a new Beaufort scale for the cool of car, or Plimsoll line, or what are the other scales that we could use? Richter scale.
Which they don't use anymore.
Do they not?
No.
That's why Gerhard Richter's had to start painting then.
But the
scale is
the equivalent new scale of earthquake strength, which is magnitude, is more or less equivalent to the Richter scale. So, in fact,
just don't call it that.
No, it is actually different. It's not quite the same. So this really is a boring digression.
No,
but if you want to know about earthquakes, yes, there's a new earthquake scale, magnitude, and it's not quite the same as Richter. But
you've been reading Earthquake Scale magazine again, haven't you?
I plead guilty.
So your Beaufort scale of cars.
I moved house earlier in the year, and on the street where I now live, further down the street, there are a couple of kids who live next door to each other. There's a big kid who's probably about 17, and then there's a young kid who's probably about 10. But they're kind of mates because they hang out together, they kick a ball around the street. They both love cars. So they've become my new barometer of whether a car is cool or not.
Arbiters of cool.
The Ferrari sent them nuts.
Yeah, it would.
The big kid turned up first. He rang on the doorbell in excitement and said, could I take a picture of the Ferrari? And I'm like, yeah, of course you can. Knock yourself out. Hang on a minute, I'll get the key. So went back out. The little kid's turned up by now. Wow, cool car. Do you want to sit in it? This was beyond exciting, and that's great, because I was thinking, when I was 10, that would have been the coolest thing in the world. I wish I'd been able to sit in a Ferrari. So they sat in the Ferrari. They loved it. While I was crouched down by the open door, showing the little kid what all the buttons did, about 8 other children turned up from nowhere. Kids I've never seen before, who I'm pretty confident don't live on my street. It's like the excitement. You know this sort of thing where you tread on a wasp
could smell
and they give off a
excitement.
chemical, that attracts other wasps. A kid who's just seen a Ferrari is so excited he's giving off a chemical that attracts, like the Pied Piper, other children.
They're called petrofoams, I believe. The chemical that's given off. Yeah.
So the car is surrounded by kids, and they're all asking all these questions to the point where...
What'll it do, mister?
Yeah, it is proper what they do, but then they're getting all technical. Is that carbon fibre? Why is that like that? I was thinking, oh my God, I might be starting to flounder here. The water can't touch the bottom anymore. I'm sort of thinking, I'm going to have to go and get the press pack and read up, because I'd only just picked the car up, and I hadn't had a chance to read up on the details. Anyway, the kids loved the Ferrari. Now, a couple of weeks after that, I think, I had a Porsche Boxster. Again, I'm sorry, it sounds like I'm showing off, but I borrowed a Porsche Boxster, the new Boxster, because I'd driven the new 911, which I liked, and I'd heard the Boxster was, if anything, even more enjoyable. It was. It's a great car. The kids loved that, really liked that. That went down well. Last week, I borrowed a car which both big kid and little kid from down my street declared to be the third coolest car I've ever brought home.
Veyron?
After the Ferrari and the Porsche Boxster. Don't be silly.
Wasn't
I'm
a
embarrassed
Veyron.
about talking about a Ferrari. Not a Veyron.
Let me third coolest car after a
Right,
Ferrari.
so over the past few
and
weeks,
a
I've had.
Porsche.
I'll let you
She's
know.
got to be a surprising one, so it can't be anything too obvious.
So in the past few weeks, I'll tell you, I've had.
It was a G-Wiz, wasn't it?
It was the Caterham 7 that Zog's going to turn into an electric car.
Yeah.
I've had Peugeot 208, Fiat Panda, Alfa Giulietta, the Porsche, Lexus GS, Kia Sportage. That's about it.
Well, it won't be
Can't
the
be the
one of
Alpha.
those-
Can't be the Alpha. That's too obvious.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
One of
there
those
wouldn't be a
is the
surprise.
third coolest car
Agreed. Can't be
the
the
kids
Kia.
on my street have ever seen.
Can't have been the
Fiat
Lexus
Panda.
because they're not
Fiat
middle-aged men, and generally we like them. Was it the
Can be the
Panda? They wouldn't have liked the Panda. Their mum's got a Panda.
It was the Lexus.
No.
Lexus GS.
Why?
I don't know. Well, I'll tell you one thing.
I mean, not saying it's a bad car. It's a fantastic
No,
car.
do you know what? It was
But
the,
not one you would necessarily expect the
Oh
sort
no,
of
not
kids
the kids to be
think
going.
it's
Not
so
you wouldn't
cool.
think a 10-year-old's
Okay.
going to go, "Wow, that's almost as cool as a Porsche Boxster and a
Wow.
Ferrari 458." They thought it looked great. They sat in it, and I sat in the driver's seat and pushed the start button, and that made the electric steering wheel come out. You know that way that it does.
Yeah.
In luxury cars, that for them, mind-blowingly brilliant. Because one of their dads has got a Golf, the other one's got an Audi A6. Neither of their steering columns do that. So they thought that was amazing.
It was
I didn't
almost
want to
like-
burst their bubble by
fine.
going, "I think you'll find a lot of luxury cars." in it." So that they liked the central display thing and the way you get DAB radio and your iPod and Bluetooth audio. All of this blew their minds. But most of all, they just liked the way it looked. They thought it looked cool, I think.
Well, they-
I also
good
liked,
taste.
and this is my favourite thing, the kids make me laugh because I didn't expect this when they would also go, "What does that do? What does that do?" And then the little kid sitting in the back and he went, "We just parked the curb on my street," and he went, "So quiet as well." So I was just sitting there, but he was like, "You can't hear anything outside. It's amazing. I'm going to get out. I'm going to shut the door. I'm going to say something. Tell me if you can hear." So he gets out, he shut the back door, he went and stood right by the front passenger door where a big kid, his mate, is sitting, and then just went, "You're a bellend!" And the big kid just went, "You know I can still hear you."
But, and that is actually the official EU test for sound.
funny enough, it is.
That's the official test.
And finally, this is the EU noise Tesla. We see here in Bay 1 a car is being tested for engine idle noise. Moving on into the next bay, this car is being tested to ensure that the stereo doesn't leak too much sound to the exterior. And finally, in this test bay, another of my colleagues is conducting a different type of noise test.
Bellend! Bellend! Oi, wanker! You twat!
Excuse me, is it really necessary to test all cars to see how many insults the driver can hear?
No, usually just BMW X5s.
Gareth Jones on speed.
I've just spent 3.5 weeks driving the Eurozone in a Geely.
A Geely.
A Geely.
Isn't that one of those suits that a Scottish poacher
Not sure.
wears? That's a...
It's
a ghillie.
It's a ghillie.
Ghillie.
I call it a
Isn't that what you
Geely.
said?
I call it a Geely because it used to be a Ford. It's a Volvo. You know, Geely, the Chinese company who acquired Volvo, went 2 years ago now. Yeah, 2010. 2 years ago.
yeah.
Yeah. And so...
It'll always be Volvo to me.
It'll always be a Volvo. And I think it is. Well, is it a Volvo, though, this car? That's a great question. It's the XC70. Now, I chose this car.
It's a Volvo.
You sure?
Yeah, it's on the P2X platform and it uses a Volvo.
Looks
five
like a Volvo.
engine.
It's
Quacks
also
like a
the
Volvo.
EU CD platform, which is the same one as the Freelander and the Mondeo. There's a lot of Premier Automotive Group in this car, which I chose deliberately for this camping trip, because I reckon this is the sort of vehicle you need for the sort of camping trip that we were doing. First requirement, that it had roof rails, so you could put a roof box on it, built-in roof rails, you know, without having to be too complicated. Second, it had a little bit of extra ground clearance, but it doesn't need to be the full Discovery thing, because, you know, we're in France, it's flat, but occasionally you might
Yeah,
go a little
you're not
bit
kind
off
of sort of
track.
going up mountains, but you're going
Yeah.
a little bit,
Yeah.
fields and...
And we had to cross the Pyrenees at one point in it, so I wanted something that was a reasonable drive and not a great towering Range Rover or something like that, which would have rolled a little bit too much. But this car had a lot of familiar stuff in it. The engine, the D5 engine that they call it, that's a Volvo engine, is it? Volvo developed the 5.
Yeah, they did, and they're starting to phase them out. Everyone's downsizing.
Well, I'm not as tall as I used to be. I'm really not. Well, before they downsize Volvos, for a Volvo, this is very familiar. There's something very familiar about this car. I've had a Discovery, I've had a Jag XF-R, I've had an S-Max, and, there's a bit of all those cars in this. Even little things, the way that the power rear door works. That's the same as the Discovery, and it's set at about the same sort of sensitivity as well. You don't have to close your boot anymore, press a button and it does it. The Discovery did that. This car, I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. I thought it would be very functional.
I mean, I think Volvo do that sort of estate off-road crossover thing rather well, I think. It's
all you need.
It's a slightly odd sort of concept, but it seems like it's quite a way to communicate. But if you're going to get somebody to do it, I think Volvo do it better than most.
To me, that car looks like the sort of thing that Volvo do better than anyone, and in a way that the XC70 sort of soft-roader doesn't.
Very tall.
But I was parked next to one the other day, and I was saying, it's a very nice looking car, but it's sort of a bit too stylish and a bit too rakish, and it's trying a bit too hard. And that XC70 has got a very, the back of it is pretty much vertical.
Classic
so
Volvo.
Maximum amount of boot room.
Well, that was the reason, because the V70, the old V70, was, I think, the only car on sale in Europe that you could fit a standard Euro pallet in the boot of. And that was maximum volume in the back when you're camping is the most important thing. Well, we did have 50 kilograms on the roof.
But you want space in the back, yeah. Actually, on the styling front, great wheels, by the way. We agree when I
fab wheels, these black wheels, yeah.
And I like the way that there's more than a hint of the old 1800 estate in the window line at the back, I think.
Yeah.
The rear side windows in particular are just, there's something in there that they've managed to evoke the 1800 estate rather nicely.
Wish you could see our hands when we describe the lines of the car.
It's a bit visual. But the other thing I like about the car, it's not trying too hard. There's something sort of unfussy about it. It's just getting on with being a useful car, which is sort of thing Volvo used to do very well.
The best Volvos are always, really hard-working, honest cars.
It looks functional. It looks technical. It doesn't look too upmarket, too shiny for the kind of vehicle that it's supposed to be, and that is a functional vehicle.
Well, actually, as a question, I don't know. How much is that car now?
Well, the extras that we had on our version, it came to £45,000. Starts at 36.
Yeah. Ooh.
Well, I guess it's some of the safety stuff. It will bump it up. How do
all
people afford cars?
I know. How do people afford cars?
I don't know.
Because
buy them second hand.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. But who buys a new car anymore? How is anyone selling any cars? All cars are more expensive than you think. A Fiesta-sized car is, in my head, and I think a lot of other people's heads, sort of
£8,000.
12, 14,000 for the GTI version, whatever. That's not true. Yeah. I drove a Peugeot 208 the other week, and it was the top spec, but diesel version, not GTI. There isn't one yet. It was a 17 and a bit grand car, and my God, you could get a Golf for that. Except, as it turns out, you barely can.
I had this conversation with Violet. That you have to reassess. Every car is expensive these days because life is expensive these days. Do people earn enough to do that? I don't know. V, coming from your area, you travelled 2,437 miles, sitting on the wrong side of a car in Europe, in the XC70. Do you hate it?
You are the voice of sanity and reason about the Volvo.
I loved that car. I really, really loved it.
That's the first time you've ever said that.
That's the first time you ever said that. Why?
Yeah, because it did everything a car is supposed to without drawing attention to itself.
So we're back to the
good.
This is
I
think it's what we were saying.
Classic
it's
Volvo.
Just being a bit sort of unpretentious.
Yeah, it was kind of, you often you get into a car and there'll be one thing that bothers you. It might be, I don't know, the noise, or it might be like the seat back slightly is in the wrong position, or it might be that you kind of like roll a bit on corners and it makes you feel a bit sick, or the back seat isn't quite big enough so the people in the back are sort of kind of getting squashed, or
Or everybody thinks you're a drug dealer, or everybody thinks you're a hairdresser, or whatever it is.
Or you feel like a poser,
Yeah.
or whatever it might be. But you get into that car and you don't feel kind of square and boring because it's got the wheels,
Yeah.
that
and
rescue
even
from
without the
that.
wheels, it was
And also, it looks purposeful. It looks like it's a car with purpose.
It's got a great
You know.
stance because it's slightly jacked up, but not too jacked up. It looks like an animal waiting to pounce. You know what I mean? It's got what all crossovers reach for, but most don't quite get. It's still relatively low in the grand scheme of things, but has a very wide stance.
Kind of looks fairly sort of solidly planted, doesn't it? Yeah.
And also, I've noticed over the years that Gareth's driving style changes depending on what car he's in. I'm sure most people are like this.
Yes.
So, for example, more recently he was driving this G-Wagon, and as he was driving, he said, "Get out of my way, puny earthlings," or whatever. As he sort of driving
Out of my way, puny Defender,
Yeah.
puny Hummer.
Was that after you gave him the brain transplant, the jar that was in the kitchen?
There was that.
That NASA dropped off? I'm just checking.
But his style changes, and with the Volvo, he's just missed a lovely driver when he drove that Volvo, I have to say
But I've
that.
noticed this too, that all good Volvos are relaxing.
Calming?
Yeah.
It was
I think
very
it helps. Did it have a
calm.
beige leather interior?
No, black leather. The engine
Was it automatic?
It was, yeah.
Okay, that
yeah.
helps.
The engine was a bit rough. It's not as good as the engine in the Geländenwagen that I drove recently. Bigger engine, and that was a 6. This 5 is a bit noisy. But, didn't 10cc sound good in that car? Some cars must have a harmonic frequency that respond well to certain types of music. I had a Saab which would only listen to Strauss once. It made Strauss sound really good. This Volvo loved 10cc. It really did. What does that say about me? Specifically, I'm Mandy Fly Me.
You're not in love. Sorry, that's unfair.
But listen, the point is that this car is a proper Volvo, I think. Like you say, it's unassuming, it's solid, it's strong.
And well thought through.
Yeah.
Because you say that there's nothing about it that annoys you, and actually that's...
That's well
that
thought
is
out.
a testament to a well sorted.
And I was in
design.
it a lot. I was in it an awful lot. And I'll tell you something else about it. And I guess people say this about Volvos. You get this idea you're in them, you feel safe because it's a Volvo. But we did thousands of miles in it and I continued to feel safe. And then we had to have this journey across the Pyrenees from France to Spain. And I kept showing Gareth the maps, going, "Oh, look," and he was going, "Oh, don't worry, I'll just put it in the sat-nav like 5 seconds beforehand. Don't worry, it's fine, I'll just follow the sat-nav." So he put it in the sat-nav, and he put shortest journey. So we whistled past the péage, which would conveniently take you through the tunnel to the other side of the Pyrenees, and went round and round and round and round, the shortest but slowest journey, up over the highest mountain, while we were all sort of groaning and terrified at the drops and single tiny barriers and no passing spots and all the rest of it.
Scary mountain roads.
But I kind of knew that would happen as well, and I'd also looked on YouTube at the most terrifying crossings of the Pyrenees so that I would know what I was in for, because I knew we would do that. And I would never have agreed to do it if we hadn't been in that car.
Okay.
So,
Violet can be a nervous. Sometimes you're super relaxed, but you can be nervous as well. And you, at no point, at any point, you were super relaxed in this, because you remember you saying, "Oh, I don't like being on this side of the car," and you're
because you're on the wrong side of the car as well, which makes you feel a bit weird.
Yeah.
So.
But this car, Volvo's primary thing is safety. That's their key message, isn't it? That's what people associate with Volvo: strength and safety. It's absolutely on message for that, because it's got lots of safety features. It's got the Bliss thing, which Jaguar have under a different name, where something comes in your blind spot, you get a light in your wing mirror to let you know. That was all very handy, bit annoying when you're in multi-lane traffic sometimes. But it's got the best adaptive cruise control of any car I've driven. Better than that Lexus, better than any Merc I've driven recently. It was so good, the adaptive cruise control. Set the distance, set the speed. I was able to do French roundabouts without touching the brake or the accelerator. When in traffic, it just follows. As long as the car in front of you stays within the radar beam of the Volvo, it will match the pace of that car. It tends to accelerate slightly as the other car accelerates, leaving the exit as you're on the apex, but it was always amusing. It was astonishing. But the best of all was when we were in northern Spain, stuck behind a moped for a while. Single lane, white line. Eventually we get an overtaking opportunity. I passed this moped with another car in front. As we came around the corner, suddenly the car in front slams on the brakes. There was a cardboard box in the middle of the road. He stops to get out and do it. He's some distance ahead. The automatic braking system in the Volvo, which I don't know what the term is, that brings the car to a halt, that stops you from hitting anything, reacted before I could. I like to think I'm fairly adept at responding quickly. It stopped the car. It was on the brakes and it brought it to an absolute halt before I could. And I was properly impressed with that, because if that's the message Volvo have always sold, you'd have a job to fault this car for doing anything other than being bang on Volvo message. Brilliant. One last thought. Hussein from next door said, that Volvo, Gareth, you like to think that if you're in a crash in a Volvo, not only will it do you no harm, you'll probably come out of it better than you were before the crash. I think he may have a point. I genuinely liked it and wish Geely well. I didn't wish Geely well before, because I liked it when Ford owned.
Well, yeah,
Volvo.
I mean, that's the only thing. I think that XC70 is coming towards the end of its life.
It has to now, doesn't it?
Because the XC60, in fact, I think they've stopped selling it in the US, which is a huge market for Volvo, because the XC60 and the XC90 are giving Americans the SUVs that they crave. And then they are putting great store in Europe in the new V40, which I'm going to drive in a couple of weeks, so I'll report back.
I would be very interested to hear
first.
that.
I mean, it would have all been done and signed off mostly under Ford, but that is the first new Volvo to be officially announced under Geely's ownership, so we'll see.
Is that on the same platform as
this
the
is Ford
Freelander?
Bits. This is Focus Bits, so
Right.
C1 or whatever the platform is. So yeah, that's a lot Ford, and there'll be no 5 and 6 cylinder engines, because it's a kind of Golf-sized car, Focus-sized car. But also, it's all downsized. So it's like 1.6 litre 4-cylinder engines are the bedrock of the range, and will be for all Volvos. They put a 1.6 4-cylinder into the S80, which I gather can move under its own power, but just sort of doesn't sound like it would be able to, and it's a kind of marketing nightmare.
Too small.
But nobody's buying. You know, I saw there was a thing this week. The biggest depreciating car in Britain last year was the Volvo S80 V8, which I don't think anyone bought, but there must be a couple of them out there, dealer cars and things. And but one of the worst depreciators, because people don't want cars with big engines like that anymore, not in something of that sort of medium size.
Two things baffled me about the XC70. My last thought on it, while I remember. First of all, it was a bit thirsty. We averaged 27 miles to the gallon over 2,500 miles at French péage speeds with a roof box on. I'd have thought it might have knocked 30
too
for that.
bad, but
I would hope a bit more. And the other one is, how come a car from Scandinavia has got one of the best air conditioning systems I've ever come across? It could chill us when it was 40 degrees in Spain, wasn't it, at one point? And this Volvo kept us cool.
Mosquitoes.
something like that. They just do everything well. They just
do,
Scandinavian efficiency.
So pleasant.
I wonder if you can have sex in it, because the Swedes do that well. Is that why it's
I'm
got a
thinking
long
there's
Euro pallet there?
wasn't there a Volvo TV ad years ago?
No, I think there was a parody of that crash test advert for the old 340. And Jasper Carrot do that.
Well,
I think
I'm sure there was a bona fide
test
people
dummy
having sex
shagging
in
in
a Volvo.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Close harmony.
YouTube will have the answer.
Music.
And we'll leave you to dig that one out. You've been listening to Violet Berlin.
Goodbye.
Richard Porter.
Goodbye.
Zog.
Goodbye.
I was Gareth Jones, and this was On Speed.
To send us an email, see pictures, get song lyrics, join our Facebook fan site or follow us on Twitter, go to garethjones.tv. Gareth Jones on Speed is made in London by Whiz Bang.
Gareth Jones on Speed!